Hi guys, this is Allison from Alleycat Creations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And if you get anything from my work, a connected on an epiphany, a mind explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore, please consider supporting my work all the way down at the bottom of the description below this video. And if you would like a pyramid, different types of pyramids, paintings. Freya is taking a nap over there with Odin. But I got lots of pyramids behind me over there. Hi. Um, Commission drawings. Holidays are coming. You need a unique gift, something that's healing, EMF, what have you. I do ornaments. I have to break those out. Please consider looking at my website, portfolio, Allylatcreations211.com. I have to see if I can afford to pay for it this year. Fun times. Um, yeah. Um, so much going on energetically. I was gonna do Law of One. I hope to get that up tomorrow. Um, it's been crazy past few days, and yeah, trying to keep to a schedule is not really keeping to a schedule because anywho, the Secret Doctrine, stanza 5. We're gonna go through it and give me a second. I'm gonna cough my brains out and hopefully get it out before I read. Let's hope that worked. The evolution of the second race. The sons of yoga, the sexless second race, the sons of the sons of twilight. The shadow or the astral man retires within, and man develops a physical body. The first race were the sons of yoga. Their sons, the children of the yellow father and the white mother. In later commentary, the sentence is translated, the sons of the sun and of the moon, the nursing of Let me rewind and do that again. The sons of the sun and of the moon, the nursling of ether or the wind. Got that right that time. They were the shadows of the lords. They, the shadows, expanded. The spirits of the earth clothed them. The solar layas warmed them, preserved the vital fire in the nascent physical forms. The breaths had life, but had no understanding. They had no fire nor water of their own. Remember in this connection that tabula Smaragdina of Hermes, the esoteric meaning of which has 7 keys to it. The astrochemical is well known to students. The anthropomorphical may be given now. The one thing mentioned in it is man. It is said that father of that one only thing is the sun, its mother the moon. The wind carries it in the bosom, and it nurse is the spirituous earth. In the occult rendering of the same, it is added in spiritual fire, its instructor, guru. This fire is the higher self, the spiritual ego, or that which is eternally reincarnating under the influence of its lower personal selves, changing with every rebirth full of tanha, or desire to live. It is a strange law of nature that on this plane, the higher spiritual nature should be, so to say, in bondage to the lower. Unless the ego takes refuge in the Atman, the all spirit, and merges entirely into the essence thereof, the personal ego may goad it to the bitter end. This cannot be thoroughly understood unless the student makes himself familiar with the mysteries of evolution, which proceeds on triple lines, spiritual, psychic, and physical. Pause. What we are all going through, and eventually will, if you're not there yet, is the ego death, because the ego is going to merge with the higher self. So all the egoistic shit that you live with in this here and now moment of 3D is going to at least slowly dissolve. Hopefully, if you're meant to ascend in the physical form, you're gonna go through an ego death, and there's multiple ego deaths you're gonna go through, but the major one is merging with your higher self, where your higher self is going to merge with the ego and use it for your betterment, not for your detriment, because that's what ego is doing in this here and now, is holding you back, because that's the doubt, that's the self-negative talk, that's the programming that the ego is trying to keep you grounded here, but it's out of survival, and yikes. Anywho, that which propels towards and forces evolution, compels the growth and development of man towards perfection, is the monad, or that which acts in its unconsciously through a force inherent in itself, and the lower astral body, or the personal self. The former, whether imprisoned in a vegetable or an animal body, is endowed with, is indeed itself that force. Owing to its identity with the all force, which, as said, is inherent in the monad. It is all potent on the arupa, or formless plane. On our plane, its essence being too pure, it remains all potential, but individually becomes inactive. The rays of the sun, which contribute to the growth of vegetation, do not select this or that plant to shine upon. Uproot the plant and transfer it to a piece of soil where the sunbeams cannot reach it, and the latter will not follow it. So with the Atman, unless the higher self or ego gravitates towards its sun, the monad, the lower ego or personal self will have the upper hand in every case. For it is this ego, with its fierce selfishness and animal desire to live a senseless life, which is the maker of the tabernacle, as Buddha calls it, the Dhammapad. Hence the expression, the spirits of the earth clothed the shadows and expanded them. To these spirits belonging temporarily the human astral selves, and it is this, they who give or build the physical tabernacle of man for the monad and its conscious principle, manas, to dwell in. But the solar layas, spirits, warm them, the shadows. This is physically and literally true. Metaphysically, or on the psychic and spiritual plane, it is equally true that the Atman alone warms the inner man. It enlightens it with the ray of divine life, and alone it able to impart to the inner man, or the reincarnating ego, its immortality. Thus, as we shall find for the first 3.5 root races, up to the middle or turning point, it is the astral shadows of the progenitors, the lunar pitras, which are the formative powers in the races, and which build and gradually force the evolution of the physical form towards perfection. This at the cost of appropriated loss of spirituality. Then from the turning point, it is the higher ego, or incarnating principle, the nous or mind, which reigns over the animal ego and rules it wherever it is not carried down by the latter. In short, spiritually, it is on an ascending arc, and the animal or physical impedes it from steadily progressing on the path of its evolution. Only when the selfishness of the personality has so strongly infected the real inner man with the lethal virus that the upward attraction has lost all its power on the thinking, reasonable man. In sober truth, vice and wickedness are an abnormal, unnatural manifestation at this period of our human evolution. At least they ought to be so. The fact that mankind was never more selfish and vicious than it is now, civilized nations have succeeded in making of the first of an ethical characteristic, of the second an art. It is an additional proof of the exceptional nature of the phenomena. Truth. The entire scheme is in the Chaldean Book of Numbers, and even in the Zohar. If one could only understand the meaning of the apocalyptic hints, First comes Ein Sof, the concealed of the concealed, then the point, Sephra, and the later Sathra, then the Azalak, I'm totally butchering that word, world, a world of emanations that gives birth to three other worlds called the throne, the abode of pure spirits, the second, the world of formation, or Jetsra, the habit of the angels who sent forth, the third, or world of action, the Asiatic world, which is the earth or our world. And yet it is said of it that this world, also called Kipra, containing the six others, spheres, and matter is the residence of the Prince of Darkness. This is clearly stated as it can be, for the Metatron, the angel of the second or Britannic world, means messenger angel, called the great teacher, and under him are the angels of the third world, Betra, whose 10 and 7 classes are the Sithroth, of whom it is said that they inhabited and vivified this world as essentially entities and intelligences whose correlatives and contraries inhabit the third or Asiatic world. These contraries are called the shells, or demons, who inhabit the 7 habitations called Sheba, Hachaloth, which are simply the 7 zones of our globe. Their prince is called in the Kabbalah Samiel, the angel of death, who is also the seducing serpent, Satan, but that Satan is also Lucifer, the brilliant angel of light, the light and life bringer, the soul alienated from the holy ones, the other angels, and for a period anticipating the time when they would have descended on earth to incarnate in their turn. Dun dun dun. The souls, monads, are pre-existent in the world of emanations, Book of Wisdom. And the Zohar teaches that in the soul is the real man, the ego and the conscious I am, manas. They descended from the pure air to be chained to bodies, says Josephus, repeating the belief of the Essenes. Their air is full of souls, says Philo. They descended to be tied to mortal bodies, being desirous to live in them. Because through and in the human form, they will become progressive beings, whereas the nature of the angel is purely intrasensitive. Therefore, man has in him the potency of transcending the faculties of the angels. Hence, the initiates in India say that it is the Brahmin, the twice born, who rules the gods or devas. And Paul repeated it in Corinthians. Know ye not that we, the initiates, shall judge angels? Finally, it is shown in every ancient scripture and cosmogony that man evolved primarily as an luminous incorporeal form, over which, like the molten brass around the clay mold of the sculptor, the physical frame of his body was built by, through, and from the lower forms and types of animal terrestrial life. The soul and the form, then descending on earth, put on an earthly garment, says the Zohar. His protoplastic body was not formed of that matter of which our mortal frames are fashioned. When Adam dwelt in the Garden of Eden, he was clothed in the celestial garment, which is the garment of heavenly light, light of that light which was used in the Garden of Eden. Man, the heavenly Adam, was created by the 10 Sitharoth of the Jetzeric world, and by the common power, they, the 7 angels of a still lower world, engendered the earthly Adam. First Samael fell, and then, deceiving, man caused his fall also. The sentence, they were the shadows of the Lords, the progenitors created man out of their own astral bodies, explains a universal belief. The Devas are credited in the East with having no shadows of their own. The Devas cast no shadows, and this is the sure sign of a good Holy Spirit. Why they had no fire or water of their own, because that which hydrogen is to the elements and gases on the objective plane, its nominum is in the world of mental or subjective phenomena, since its Tritarian lent nature is mirrored in its three active emanations from the three higher principles in man, namely spirit, soul, and mind, or Atma, Buddhi, and Manas. It is the spiritual and also the material human basis. Rudimentary man, having been nursed by the air or the wind, becomes the perfect man later on when, with the development of spiritual fire, the nominum of the three in one within himself, he acquires from his inner self or instructor the wisdom of self-consciousness, which he does not possess in the beginning. Thus, here again, divine spirit is symbolized by the sun or fire, divine soul by water and the moon, both standing for the father and mother of noumena, human soul, or mind, symbolized by the wind or air, for phenomena means breath. I'm totally butchering that word, sorry. Hence, in the Smardine tablet, disfigured by Christian hands, the superior agrees with the inferior and the inferior with the superior to the effect that one truly wonderful work, which is man, for the secret work of Haram or King Haram in the Kabbalah, one is seen, but three is aspect in the universal agent or lapis philosophiorum. The culmination of the secret work is spiritual perfect man. At one end of the line, the union of the three elements is the occult solvent in the soul of the world, the cosmic soul or astral light. At the other, and on the material plane, it is hydrogen in its relation to the other gases. The two on truly the one, whom no person has seen except the sun, this sentence applying both to the metaphysical and physical cosmos and to the spiritual and material man, for how could the latter understand the two on the one father if his manas, the son, does not become as one with the father, and through the absorption receives enlightenment from the divine instructor guru, Atma Buddhi. If thou wouldest understand the secondary creation, so-called, on Lano, thou shouldst first study its relation to the primary. Commentary Book of Dzyan. The first race had three elements, but no living fire. Why? Because we say four elements, the sun, but ought to say three, says Hermes Trismegistus. In the primary circle creation, that which is marked, it has some silly sign there. It's not silly, but an alchemical sign, reads root as a secondary likewise. Thus, in alchemy or Western Hermeticism, a variant on Eastern esotericism, we find sulfur, hydrogenium, sal, flamma, natural matter, spiritus, aqua, sanguis. And I'm butchering Latin. Sorry, guys. I could clear my throat again. Allergies, gotta love them. And all these three are all quaternaries completed by the root, fire, and spirit beyond manifested nature, is the fiery breath in its absolute unity. Sorry, guys, I'm trying. In the manifested universe, it is the central spiritual sun, the electric fire of all life. In our system, it is the visible sun, the spirit of nature, the terrestrial God. And in, on, and around the earth, the fiery spirit thereof, air, fluidic fire, water, liquid fire, earth, solid fire, all is fire, ignis, in its ultimate constitution, for I, the root of which is O, not in our conceptions, the all in nature and its mind. Pro matter is divine fire. It is the creator, the destroyer, the preserver. The primitive names of the gods are all connected with the fire, from Agni, the Aryan, to the Jewish god, who is a consuming fire. In India, God is called the various dialects Ashur, Ishur, Iswar, and Isvara. In Sanskrit, the Lord, from Isa, but this is primarily the name of Siva, the destroyer, and the three Vedic chief gods are Agni, Vayu, and Sura, fire, air, and the sun. Three occult degrees of fire. In the Hebrew, Azza means to illuminate, and Asha is fire. In occultism, to kindle a fire is synonymous to invoking one of the three great fire powers, or to call on God. In Sanskrit, Osh or Ash is fire, he, and the Egyptian word Osiris is compounded as shown by Schelling of the two primitives Ash and Ashar, or a fire enchanter. Ashar in the old Etruscan meant a god, being perhaps derived from Ashura of the Vedas. Aswara and Eswara are analogous terms, as Dr. Keenly thought. In the Bhagavad Gita, we read, Iswara resides in every mortal being and puts in motion by his supernatural power all things which mount on the wheel of time. It is the creator and the destroyer, truly. The primitive fire was supposed to have an insatiable appetite for devouring. Maximus of Tyre relates that the ancient Persians threw into the fire combustible matter, crying, devour, O Lord. In the Irish language, Isam or Assam means to create, and Aser was the name of the ancient Irish god, meaning to light a fire. The Christian Kabbalists and symbologists who disfigured Primander, prominent among them the Bishop of Ari, Francois, sorry, it's French, de Tours, in the 16th century, divided the elements in this way. The four elements formed from divine substances and the spirits of the salts of nature, represented by St. Matthew, angel man, water, Christ, Jesus Christ, angel man, Michael. St. Mark, the lion, fire. St. Luke, the bull, earth. St. John, the eagle, air. The quintessence, Flamma Virgo, from virgin oil, Flamma decimia, I suck at Latin, Virgo Lucy, Eterna Mater. I'm bad at Latin. The first race of man were then simply the images, the astral doubles of their fathers, who were the pioneers or the most progressive entities from a preceding, though lower sphere, the shell of which is now our moon. But even this shell is an old potential for having generated the earth. It is the phantom of the moon, which, attracted by magnetic affinity, sought to form its first inhabitants, the pre-human monsters. To assure himself of this, the student has again to turn to the Chaldean fragments and read that Berosus says Berosus obtained his information, he tells us, from Ea, the male-female deity of wisdom. While the gods were generated in its androgynous bosom, its reflections became on earth the woman Amoroka, who is the Chaldean Thrav, whatever that word is, or the Greek Thalassa, the deep or sea, which esoterically have been exoterically, is the moon. It was the moon who presided over the monstrous creation of nondescript beings, which were slain by the Dionysus. Evolutionary law compelled the lunar fathers to pass in their monadic conditions through all the forms of life and being on this globe, but at the end of the third round, they were already human in their divine nature and were thus called upon to become the creators of the forms destined to fashion the tabernacles of the less progressive monads, whose turn it was to incarnate. These forms are called sons of yoga because yoga, union with Brahma exoterically, is the supreme condition of the passive infinite deity, since it contains all the divine energies and is the essence of Brahma, who is said as Brahma to create everything through yoga power. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are the most powerful energies of God. Brahma, the neuter, says a Puranic text, yoga here is the same as dhyana, which word is again synonymous with yoga in the Tibetan text, where the sons of yoga are called sons of dhyana, or of the abstract meditation through which the Dhyani Buddhists create their celestial sons, the Dhyana Bodhisattva. I am saying that. I'm butchering these things. I'm sorry, guys. All the creatures in the world have each a superior above, the superior whose inner pleasure is to emanate into them cannot impart efflux until they have adored. Meditate as during yoga. Interesting. The second race was the product of budding and expansion, the asexual form from the sexless shadow. Thus was Lano, the second race produced. What will be most contested by scientific authorities is an asexual race, the second, the fathers of the sweetborn, so-called, and perhaps still more the third race, the egg-born androgynes. These two modes of procreation are the most difficult to comprehend, especially for the Western mind. It is evident that no explanation can be attempted for those who are not students of occult metaphysics. European language has no words to express things which nature repeats no more at this stage of evolution, things which therefore can have no meaning for the materialist. But there are analogies. It is not denied that in the beginning of physical evolution, there must have been process in nature, spontaneous generation, for instance, now extinct, which are repeated in other forms. Thus, we are told that microscopic research shows no permanence of any particular mode of reproducing life, for it shows that the same organism may run through various metamorphoses in the course of its life cycle, during some of which it may have been sexual, and in others asexual. It may reproduce itself alternately by the cooperation of two beings of opposite sex, and also by fissure or budding from one being only. How could this Shayas reproduce themselves otherwise? Procreate the second race, since they were ethereal, asexual, and even devoid as yet of the vehicle of desire or kama rupa, which evolved only in the third race. They evolved the second race unconsciously, as do some plants, or perhaps as the amoeba, only on a more ethereal, impressive, and larger scale. If indeed the cell theory applies equally to botany and zoology and extends to morphology, as well as the physiology of organisms, and if the microscopic cells are looked upon by physical science as independent living beings, just as occultism regards the fiery lives, there is no difficulty in the conception of primitive process of procreation. Consider the first stage of the development of a germ cell. Its nucleus grows, changes, and forms a double cone or a spindle, thus looks like an 8 or hourglass. Within the cell, the spindle approaches the surface of the cell, and one half of it's extruded in the form of what are called the polar cells. These polar cells now die, and the embryo develops from the growth and segmentation of the remaining part of the nucleus, which is nourished by the substance of the cell. then why could not beings have lived thus and been created in this way at the very beginning of human and mammalian evolution? This may perhaps serve as an analogy to give some idea of the process by which the second race was formed from the first. The astral form clothing the monad was surrounded, as it still is, by its egg-shaped sphere of aura, which here corresponds to the substance of the germ cell or ovum. The astral form itself is the nucleus, now as then, instinct with the principle of life. When the season of reproduction arrives, the subastral extrudes a miniature of itself from the egg of surrounding aura. This germ grows and feeds on the aura till it becomes fully developed. When it gradually separates from the parent, carrying with it its own sphere of aura, just as we see living cells reproducing, they're alike by growth and subsequent division into two. The analogy with the polar cells would seem to hold good sense. Their death would now correspond to the change introduced by the separation of sexes, when gestation in utero within the cell become the rule. The early second root race, where the fathers of the sweet-born, the later second root race, were sweat-born themselves. Sweet-born. This passage from the commentary refers the work of evolution from the beginning of a race to its close. The sons of Yoga, or the primitive astral race, had 7 stages of evolution racially or collectively, as every individual being in it had and has now. It is not Shakespeare only who divided the ages of man into a series of 7, but nature herself. Thus, the first sub-race of the second race were born at first by the process described on the law of analogy, while the last being gradually pari passu with the evolution of the human body to be formed otherwise. The process of reproduction had 7 stages. Also in each race, each covering eons of time. What physiologists or biologists could tell whether the present mode of generation, with all its phases of gestation, is older than 500,000 or at most 1 million of years, since their cycle of observation began hardly half a century ago. Primeval human hermaphrodites are a fact in nature well known to the ancients and form one of Darwin's greatest perplexities. Yet there is certainly no impossibility, but on the contrary, a great probability that hermaphroditism, I'm totally butchering that too, existed in the evolution of early races, while on the grounds of analogy and on that of the existence of one universal law in physical evolution, acting indifferently in the construction of a plant, animal, and man, it must be so. The mistaken theories of monogenesis and the descent of man from the mammals instead of the reverse are fatal to the completeness of evolution as taught in modern schools on Darwinism lines, and they will have to be abandoned in view of the insuperable difficulties which they encounter. Occult tradition, if the term science and knowledge are denied in this particular to antiquity, can alone reconcile the inconsistencies and fill the gap. If thou wilt know the invisible, open thine eyes wide on the visible, says a Talmudic axiom. In the Descent of Man occurs the following passage, which shows how near Darwin came to the acceptance of this ancient teaching. It has been known that in the vertebrate kingdom, one sex bears rudiments of various accessories, parts appertaining to the reproductive system which properly belong to the opposite sex. Some remote progenitor of the whole vertebrate kingdom appears to have been hermaphrodite or androgynous. But here we encounter a singular difficulty. In the mammalian class, the males possess rudiments of a uterus, with the adjacent passages in the vascular I'm just going to say prostate, whatever language that's in. They bear also rudiments of mammal, and some marsupials have traces of marsupial sac. Other analogous facts could be added. Are we then to suppose that some extremely ancient mammal continued androgynous after it had acquired the chief distinctions of its class, and therefore after it had diverged from the lower classes of the vertebrate kingdom? This seems very improbable, for we have to look for fishes, the lowest of all the classes, to find any still existent androgynous forms. Mr. Darwin is evidently strongly disinclined to adopt the hypothesis, which the facts so forcibly suggest, that of a primeval androgynous stem from which the mammalia sprang. His explanation runs the fact that the various accessory organs proper to each sex are found in a rudimentary condition in the opposite sex may be explained by such organs having been gradually acquired by the one sex and then transmitted in a more or less imperfect condition to the other. He instances the case of spurs, plumes, and brilliant colors acquired by battle or for ornamental by male birds, and only partially inherited by their female descendants. In that problem to be dealt with, however, the need of more satisfactory explanation is evident, the facts being of so much more prominent and important a character than their mere superficial details with which they are compared by Darwin. Why not candidly admit the argument in favor of the hermaphroditism, whatever, you know what I'm talking about, which characterizes the old fauna? Occultism proposes a solution which embraces the facts that most comprehensive and simple manner. These relics of prior androgyny stock must be placed in the same category as the pineal gland and other organs as mysterious, which afford us silent testimony as to the reality of functions which have long since become atrophied in the course of animal and human progress, but which one played a signal part in the general economy and primeval life. The occult doctrine, anyhow, can be advantageously compared with that of the most liberal man of science, who has theorized upon the origin of the first man. Long before Darwin, Naudin, who gave the name blasphema to that which the Darwinists call protoplasm, put forward a theory half occult and half scientifico-materialistic. He made Adam the asexual spring suddenly from the clay, as it is called in the Bible, the blasphema of science. It is from this larva form of mankind that the evolutive force effective the contemplation of species. For the accomplishment of this great phenomena, Adam had to pass through a phase of immobility and unconsciousness, very analogous to the nifl state of an animal's undergoing metamorphosis, explains Naudin. For the eminent botanist, Adam was not one man, however, but mankind, which remained concealed within a temporary organism, distinct from all others and never contracting alliance with any of these. He shows the differentiation of sexes accomplished by a process of germination similar to that of Medusa and Acadians. Mankind, thus constituted psychologically, would retain a sufficient evolution force from the rapid production of various great human races. A dude's name that there is no way I am pronouncing criticizes this position in the human species. It is unscientific, he says, or properly speaking, Naudin's idea do not form a scientific theory inasmuch as primordial blasphema is connected. In his theory, with the first cause, which is credited with having made potentially in the blasphema all past, present, and future beings, and thus having in reality created these beings in mass. Moreover, Naden does not even consider the secondary causes or their actions in the evolution of the organic world. Science, which is only occupied with secondary causes, has thus nothing to say to the theory of Naden, nor will it have any more to say to the occult teachings, which are to some extent approached by Naden. For if we but see in his primordial blasphema the dhyanic kohanic essence, the chala, or double for the pitras, which contains within itself the potentiality of all forms, we are quite in accord. But there are two real and vital differences between our teachings. M. Naden declares the evolution has progressed by sudden leaps and bounds instead of extending slowly over millions of years. And his primordial blasphema is endowed only with blind instincts, a kind of unconscious first cause in the manifested cosmos, which is an absurdity, whereas it is our dhyanic, kohanic essence, the causality of the primal cause, which creates physical man, which is the living, active, and potential matter pregnant per se with the animal consciousness of a superior kind, such as is found in an ant and the beaver, which produces the long series of physiological differentiations. Apart from this, his ancient and general process of creation from proto-organisms is an occult as any theory of Porcelius or Kunthrath could be. Moreover, the Kabbalistic works are full of the proof of this. The Zohar, for instance, says that every type in the visible has its prototype in the invisible universe. All that which is in the lower, our world, is found in the upper. The lower and the upper act and react upon each other. And we're going to end that. We're not done with stanza 5, but we're going to end and cut this section into some halves because it goes on. And I don't want to overwhelm people because that's a lot. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one. I did. I actually am very in alignment with some of this stuff, not so much. But it's cool. It's good to hear. It's refreshing to my mind. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for your support and your help. I couldn't do a lot of what I do without people viewing me and supporting me. So thank you. Sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protective energy. Please go within. Be the shoulder. Be the lighthouse. Seed your truth. Don't let the world dim your light. I got this from the Cat Cafe. Don't let the world dim your light. Be the light for other people. Be the pillar of strength that you are needed to be right now. It's very difficult, but we're all here. We'll all get through it. And I hope to see you guys on the next one. Thank you so much, and bye for now.